Meghan Markle is more unpopular than ever. That is according to YouGov, which does consistent polling around the royals. It has shown that while Catherine and William remain the most popular royals, Meghan Markle is second to last, barely above Andrew. And her popularity continues to crater every single time they take this poll, pretty much. And this is sort of crazy because, by any stretch of the imagination, Meghan Markle has been all over news media this year with her show, returning to Instagram, podcasts, brand, all these sorts of things. Meghan Markle is consistently throwing herself in front of all of us. And you would think that after a while, this would start to result in strong dividends. But in fact, everything's going in the opposite direction. And I'm not surprised because I did a whole video talking about the overexposure of Meghan Markle, how since she's in front of us all the time, people are just getting sick of her. And I think what we see in this YouGov poll is reflected not only in the citizens of the UK, but pretty much everyone all over the world. And this should be just massive, massive red flags for Netflix if they aren't already. Because yes, her show was watched. Yes, her product sold out. But we still have many questions behind some of those metrics. And I think, as time has always shown when it comes to Meghan, people start with the curiosity factor, but Meghan cannot hold them over the finish line. And this is going to tank her brand. And I think there's actually some pretty astute observations from a commentator out there who's not related to royal stuff, who I think really captures why Meghan is not sticking. She throws everything against the wall, but things keep sliding down. Nothing is sticking. And I think I know why her popularity may never recover. And we'll go into all this, but if you haven't been to Royal News Network before, hello, my name is Brittany. I provide compelling royal commentary. So please hit that subscribe button. I would love to have you back. This is an amazing and fun channel. We do have a great sponsor here, which is Ana Lucia Diamonds. So they are lab created diamonds. I have this absolutely lovely necklace on here today and some diamond hoop earrings. I just love these because they're so classic. And I do have my 7-stone eternity band here on my finger. So I absolutely love all that they have. So if you're interested in checking out any of their collection, feel free to hit the link down below or up above. And if you use code ROYAL20, you shall save 20%. And what this does too is help support the channel and all that we do here on Royal News Network. And so to go on to what the other royals are doing, because there's a lot going on, we have some confirmations of who is going to be attending the first official communion of Pope Leo, sort of the inauguration communion, or I guess coronation communion. There's like different wordings of how people use, because coronation is specifically for a monarch that has a religious function. In the case of Charles, he's the head of the Church of England, but most of the other royals, they have like inaugurations, even though they're quite large and ostentatious. So much language being used here. But we know that King Felipe and Queen Letizia are attending. We know Queen Maxima is as well. And King Felipe and Queen Matilda of the Belgians are also attending. And I'm sure we'll get a confirmation of a couple others. I think Crown Princess Victoria is attending too. I've seen a couple of the announcements on X, and I have not been as good as I should be about marking who all is going. But it's a big deal too for Queen Maxima to go, because in the Netherlands, nobody went to the funeral of Pope Francis because it happened to occur the same day as King's Day. And she is actually also Catholic, even though her husband and children are Protestant. So it's very apt that she does go ahead and attend. We also have a Buckingham Palace garden party going on today as I'm recording this right now. We also have Catherine, the Princess of Wales, who handed out the Queen Elizabeth II Award for British Design. She did that yesterday in a Victoria Beckham suit, which has basically completely sold out. All the willow color is gone. And I don't think that color would have looked good on me, but I am eyeing the mauve. It's a very pricey. So do I really want to? But it's not as pricey as the Alexander McQueen stuff, in case you're curious. Actually, and Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, also owns the same suit in the blue color. And guys, I have to say, it's rather crazy the difference of the look between Sophie and Catherine. Catherine just looks way better. Sophie's looks a bit dumpier, showing that you can wear the same thing, but styling really does come into play. And I think height does too. I say this all the time. Height is a thing in fashion. It really does help. So that is a popular suit with royals. And so because it was a British fashion award, it made sense that Catherine showed up in a British fashion outfit. And if you're not checking out Royal Fashion News, which is the sister channel to this one that covers all things related to royal fashion, you can head over there as well to check out. Although I haven't done a review of that, I've been keeping up with the fashion, trying to do more on X and Instagram. But there's just so much going on. Hard to get to everything. And we did also have another event last night, which was super cool because Princess Beatrice attended along with King Charles and Queen Camilla hosting. It was the Elephant Family Evening of Art and Conservation at the Kew Garden. So Princess Beatrice was in this red dress, which was slightly too long. She should have hemmed it. And King Charles has been the patron of the Royal Botanic Gardens of Kew since 2016, and the charity is related to Queen Camilla's brother. So lots of familial connections there. So very fun to see. And we also have King Wilhelm Alexander and Queen Maxima visiting one of the regions there in the Netherlands. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce them because they're very long and I think I would butcher it. So it looks like they had a lot of fun, though. It was great to see them out and about. And Queen Letizia of Spain recently attended the Red Cross fundraising day over there in Spain. And King Felipe, her husband, is over in Coimbra in Portugal at the Europe Summit in 2025. And actually, believe it or not, I have been to Coimbra, but it's been a long time, a long time. So good to see the royals all out and about. I'm sure I missed a couple of things. If I did, I'll add them down below. I like to do these sections I call sort of the Crown Report, going over what the other royals around Europe are doing. Oh, and I did forget one, which I think is super sweet, which is that Prince Jacques and Princess Gabriella of Monaco had their first communion this last weekend. They are so cute in their picture, and I love how she's holding his hand. They're actually quite close, the twins, and they went through some hardship because their mother was sick for a period of time. She wasn't doing so well. And so I really think they're quite close. I don't know if Prince Albert is a great husband. He seems to have a lot of issues there, but he seems to be a pretty good father, and he's a great uncle to his nieces and nephews because a lot of them don't have a consistent father figure in their lives, and I think he actually fulfills that role for quite a few of them. Some of it's just due to divorce and others tragedies. So Princess Caroline's second husband, Stefano Cazzaraghi, died in a boating accident. So she was a widow with 3 young children. So I think he probably really stepped into that role for her. And so although the Monaco royal family has issues, you could say, I feel like at the same time, they are all very close too. So, onto this royal favorability thing. And I want to offer up beginning with a caveat, which is that, and I mentioned this in when I was doing a more consistent Crown Report segment. I've sort of gotten away from that just because of time issues and those sorts of things. When it comes to these popularity polls, one of the things that sort of bothers me is that royals are not politicians. They're basically there their entire lives. So when it comes to Charles, he has been there for the entirety pretty much of his mother's reign, and now he is continuing with his own. So there's a continuity there that doesn't exist with politicians. And so to consistently poll them every couple of months, I think is a little much because they're not politicians in that every decision they make has a reaction to the public. However, why the consistent polling now exists is because of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Every time they do something, they're consistently polling them more and more to see more how the public is reacting to Harry and Meghan and how it's impacting the royals than actually seeing how popular the royals are. And so this is sort of frustrating to me in many ways. But the most recent poll has been, I think, pretty devastating for Meghan Markle for sure, because it has revealed that despite her full court press this year, Meghan's popularity reaches its lowest point to date. And this is not a surprise to me. Like I said in the intro, I did a whole video about the overexposure of Meghan Markle. She is everywhere. She's constantly in your face. And people just get sick of that after a while. And I'm going to, at the end, explain to you what I think really, truly the crux of that is and how her longness in the media has sort of reached its bandwidth. Let's go through the nitty gritty here because I do like polls. So I'm not I'm not somebody who's against polls. I actually really like them. But I really do think that the poll is a reflection of Harry and Meghan's potential damage on the monarchy than it really is in addressing how people feel about the royals. And that's sort of where I have an issue with it. But it also reveals a lot about Harry and Meghan. And that's really the point of this is that Harry and Meghan, and I need to do a whole different video on this because I think addressing the Harry and Meghan issue by Charles is like a must have. He cannot keep going down the path that they're going. Charles can't. Is that they have to address the Harry and Meghan issue and they have to be harsher in this dynamic. That's a conversation for a different time. I think there is now generally very much a sense of if the royal family was to strip the titles of Harry and Meghan, I think most people would stand up and applaud at this point. So it says that despite Harry's interview with the BBC, where he was very emotional, his popularity has also tanked. So his popularity right now is only at 27% have a positive opinion of him, compared to 63% having a negative opinion of him. His worst score since early 2023. And of course, that was when his book Spare was released. People aren't super positive. So here's the whole favorability ratings. Prince William comes out at top with 75% liking and 16% disliking. Now, I want to say as well, when it comes to these scores, a high of sort of, I don't know, is not necessarily super bad because you can push these people one way or the other. And so generally you want to push them over here to favorability. So having people who have, let's say, not made a firm opinion yet. So this is good for like Sophie and Edward and Beatrice and Eugenie, is that they can push people in a more positive direction. There's that potential. Whereas people who are usually like or dislike are pretty staunchly, firmly in their sides of the camp. So William has 75, Catherine 72. Princess Anne, of course, not a surprise at number 3 at 69% have a positive view. And this is a thing that Harry, I think, totally misses when it comes for royalty. It's not about the status and how that looks. Princess Anne does the, you could say, royal engagements not everybody wants to do. She goes out into the random communities, does very small engagements, opens up a horse center, opens up a library, visits a farm. I don't know why I always think of farms. But anyways, she does the small things and she does them so consistently. Is that yes, she doesn't get publicity when she goes and does things. It's very minimal. But her going there to each community, shaking people's hands, that's what's keeping the monarchy in a good spot. Really, it is. There was actually a report that came out a couple of years ago where it said that those bread and butter royal engagements are really what is good for the monarchy. Because when it comes to Catherine and William, and I know people absolutely love them, but this is just something because of that report, I think William should sometimes and Catherine consider as well, which is that, yes, they have these big projects. We have Earthshot, we have the homelessness initiative, Homewards, I think it is, and we have early years project for Catherine. It looks like she's doing something that's now going to be more focused on nature. So they have these big projects. But if that particular project as a British citizen doesn't really mean anything to you, you don't really struggle with homelessness, although you have empathy for those who do, you're not super into the environment. So it's like, well, the Earthshot, I mean, that's okay, but that's maybe not where someone thinks that attention should be made because they're having problems locally. And is that local factor? William has sort of this big grand view, but really you need to mix the granular and the minor. And that's what Anne does so well. Anne is their minor player and she is critical to the monarchy. I cannot even stress enough to you how critical her role is. I know for Catherine and William, because they attract so much attention that they can't do some of those smaller bread and butter royal engagements. And so in some ways, it does make more sense for them to have sort of, you could say, bigger engagements and those sorts of things. But they need that Anne role. The Anne role is critical. And that's why she's so high. She goes and she's probably met more people in Britain than most of the other royal family. She just has. And because she is in her mid 70s now, they're going to lose that factor. And I think that's going to be not so great in the long run. Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, is kind of filling that role, and so is Edward. And so maybe when Princess Anne, let's say, either fully retires or whatever, that maybe they can sort of slip into that spot. But William and Catherine will need somebody to fill that role. I know this is a bit of a side tangent, but I think that's so critical. And the sad thing is, Harry could have filled that role if he wasn't so selfish and he wasn't so desperate for cash. That role would have been the best role, I think, of the monarchy in some ways, because you do the small stuff, you get to go home. And because of your diligent service, you get the love of the people. Harry demands service, while Anne has seen her favorabilities very much rise in response to just being somebody who's diligent, somebody who's lacks drama, and somebody who's just there to support her family. And her role, I think, is the central foundation stone, I think, of the monarchy, to be quite honest. I cannot stress enough to you how important she is. And the royal family really needs to consider what it looks like if she's not there doing those engagements. That's why I think Catherine and William, I think William has mentioned before that Charlotte and Louis will have maybe outside jobs. No, no, no. They need that Anne presence. Somebody who's lower down, who can go and do the smaller things without the huge security apparatus that the other royals require. They need an Anne. The next generation 100% means an Anne. So just want to give Anne the massive kudos that she deserves. She deserves them. And then we have Charles at 61, royal family in general at 60, which is a bit disappointing, but you have the people dragging it down. So we have the royal family in general and the institution here in the middle. And I wish these numbers were a bit better. And these 35% is a bit concerning. Now, we do have the growing sort of anti-monarchy movement. And so I think that is factoring in there as well. But you look at everybody below. Now, I will avoid Edward and Sophie because I think because we have these massive I don't know sections, I think people are just kind of like, I don't know. And they can push people either way. So I think the more they can get Sophie and Edward out, I think the better. And they are getting out more and more. So if they just are going to continue to be diligent, I think they'll see their numbers rise to more of a Princess Anne level here before too long. But then you have Camilla, and of course, people don't like her because of Diana. I think that's a little ridiculous. That was decades ago now. Time to let it go, guys. If William can let it go, the public should let it go too. Let's be honest. Then you have Beatrice and Eugenie. I'm glad. I don't know why people don't like them. I think they're sweet. But here's the badness. Prince Harry, 27% have a favorable view of him, whereas 63% do not. And then you have Meghan, who has a 20% favorable view, and 65% do not. That's a negative rating of negative 45. That's really bad. Now, what's surprising is that people are pretty firm in their belief of Harry and maybe a slightly less with Meghan. And like very, very slightly. And I think this is concerning. And I think these numbers here, these three, including Andrew, just has a favorability of 5%. I think this is what's dragging the monarchy down are these three. I think they are actually dragging down the overall number. And it's because the monarchy can't figure out quite how to deal with them yet. I think they kind of want to just let things play out when you need to be more decisive in this age. I think, maybe some years ago you could have done the long drawn out process, but that doesn't work anymore. For Meghan, especially someone who is desperately now trying to rebrand, and Netflix, who has put a lot of money and effort into her, this should be scaring the bejesus out of them. And I know it's just the UK. And I think probably in the United States, you'll have more people who are maybe in the I don't know camp. But a lot of people don't like her here either. I hardly meet anyone who likes Meghan Markle. I honestly don't. And maybe, yes, it depends on where I live. I live in the South, so maybe that has a factor. I know I've met people, like one girl in California was like, well, just didn't they not like her because of racism? Like, no, no, no. And so some people glom onto that. But this year, I think, has been really different for Meghan because she is really, really trying to push herself, shove herself in front of us. And as we've seen, it just hasn't really gone all that well for her. And if we look at the sort of, I think, overall tracking numbers here, you can see how Catherine has been pretty consistent. And this is when they just did polls every once in a while. That's what we saw. So this is pretty consistent. And then we get more variation here because they're pulling a lot more, which again, they shouldn't be pulling this much. Anyway, so largely we've had Charles go up and down. He's kind of consistently William's pretty solid, although he's gone up and down. Catherine's had a little bit of a dip. But Harry and Meghan, especially Harry, we see him being at one point one of the most popular royals. Like he peaked at 81%, had a favorable view of him. And then he drops by 50 points, 53 points, or 54 points to 27%. And we see Meghan here peaking at 55 and then craters down by 35 points. Now, Harry's had a bigger, you could say, fall from grace, and Meghan never pulled that high. But I think this is actually sort of fascinating if you think about Meghan Markle overall. So, what we've seen consistently with every single project related to Harry and Meghan is that it starts off kind of good. It's okay. Like her podcast recently, guys, it was peaked at what, number 2 or something on the Apple iTunes chart. And she made a big post. It's like, thank you so much. Guys, I looked yesterday and we'll look today just to double check. Her show is not even in the top 200 podcasts, and it's been just 6 weeks. It's gone from this to this. It has happened every single time without fail. It's that she craters down. And when you look at the future of her business, she's like teasing more stuff on As Ever again. I've tested her peppermint tea. It was one of the most horrific things I've ever tasted in my life. Her products were cheap in many ways. They were inconsistent. Like, I know I've made this just because this is here in my office like every day. So I keep things here and I forget it. I mean, guys, this was so bad. She actually had 2 different font sizes. So number 4 font is actually bigger than the rest. And you can tell maybe a little bit. Sorry, the camera unfocused, but it's actually bigger. So she made a big fuss about having, she's so attention to detail and everything. And guys, I found numerous silly errors in her material. And her tea didn't even have on the tea bags, guys. The little tags didn't even have branding on it. It was so incredibly cheap. And I think, yes, her initial batch sold out because it's always a curiosity factor that kind of boosts her ego. Is that some people, yes, will tune in for the curiosity factor. And this includes a huge swath of journalists like me, others who bought her products to test them because she didn't send any out to people who would give her a bad review. And she would very carefully curated who she would send them to, knowing that most likely those people would just have glowing things to say. But people like me who actually have no affiliation with her and just was like, just got to test these for my own veracity, tested them and gave them a very, very poor review because they were poor. They weren't good. Like her shortbread cookies were okay. I did like the hibiscus tea. But the peppermint tea was like one of the most horrific things. The shortbread cookies, I mean, they were nice, but it's like nothing special. Neither were the crepes. Nothing in her brand was particularly good. And so, because of the middling reviews, I'm curious how much of a response she'll get for the second batch. And remember, too, she made a big hype about everything sold out in 45 minutes. But we have zero clue how many products she has. So that number almost means nothing because if you had 200 of each products, yeah, you'll probably sell out in 45 minutes. She's a big name. But if you have 200,000 products, I just doubt that was the case. She didn't have that many. I mean, at most, guys, I think at most everything had maybe 500. If that, I think some things had less. I imagine the most thing she stocked was a spread, and then everything else was sort of lower than that. And the honey, I mean, she might have just had 20 of those, to be honest. She hardly had any of that. She didn't even have enough of that to put in the promotional packages. And so at the end of the day, the curiosity factor got her, but will it be the same the second time around? Yes, a lot of her fans, because she was so crappy at getting the word out, were unable to actually purchase her stuff because I actually finished my purchase because I was watching the website about 9 a.m. Well, 8 a.m. and then 9 a.m. because I figured that's when it would launch. And then that was about the right time. So I finished my order at 9:13. Well, the email she sent out for people who she asked to save their seat at the table, by the time they got that email, 2 products at least had already sold out. That was the honey and the flower sprinkles, because those were the only 2 things I didn't get. So Meghan has had this sort of consistent thing. I think of in some ways, I feel bad for her actual fans because they weren't watching the website close enough and they missed stuff. And I actually genuinely feel bad for them. So, this next batch, I don't know if it'll do quite as well because the curiosity factor is gone. I've tried it, I give it all a massive thumbs down, and she'll come out with more. But how much of it I think is anybody really clamoring for? That's sort of the big question in all of this. And then you have the TV show, which she'll have a second season this fall. I don't know if it'll do as well the first season if it doesn't have a controversy surrounding it. In this case, the first season it was when Meghan chastised Mindy Kaling for calling her Meghan Markle. And she goes, I'm Sussex now. I think when it comes to that, that's why people tuned in. People tuned in to watch that snafu. And then a lot of people started at episode 1 and tuned out, or maybe got as far as episode 2 and then they were done. So I imagine even the numbers say, according to Netflix's how they do the metrics, which is a little underhanded, you could say, because they divide watch time by the hour of the show. So depending on how many hours the show goes, that they divide the watch time by that. So they can say 2.6 million people tuned in. However, that number could actually be much bigger because maybe most of the views were just for those first 2 episodes. And again, we see it with the thing here. People tune in for the curiosity factor, but Meghan can't keep them. And that encompasses her whole public life at this point. She got a bit of the curiosity factor. Some people were engaged with her, thought she was interesting. And then the more she shoves herself in front of our face, the less we like her. And she loses ground every single year. And no matter how much she shoves herself in our face, a lot of people watch more for news media issues. Like for me, I track news stuff, and so that's why I watch. Or there's a small cadre of actual fans. Like most people don't really care. Even the reviews of her podcast, I'm like, they're still doing those? Does anybody actually read them? And the only news that comes out from her podcast are like little anecdotes, like she doesn't actually cook for her family most of the time anymore. She gets takeout. And there's nothing wrong with that, but she made a whole show about being a homemaker. And then you find out she's not cooking for her family all that often. She even mentioned in something, it was actually the Drew Barrymore. There was a Drew Barrymore bit that they actually put on Paramount Plus that they pulled later. I was really bummed I didn't fully record it. Anyway, she talked about for Thanksgiving, she actually ordered out for Thanksgiving. She didn't actually make the food. She's like, oh, I'm so busy. I mean, I understand you're busy, but you also have people to do a lot of things for you. Like for me, I do everything myself. So I am very busy. She has people to do a lot of things for her. She should have time, technically, if she prioritized it to make Thanksgiving dinner for her family, which is probably why she didn't have her Instagram post at that time. Anyways, so where are we getting to for all this? Why does Meghan Markle's popularity continue to tank? And I actually thought Michael Knowles, he is a commentator for the Daily Wire. I know some people will maybe have issue with that, but he actually pointed out something that I've said before too, but I think he puts it in a more succinct way. And what I like is an outside person. So a person's not mired in this royal space talking about Meghan and the public's reaction to her. So I wanted to play you guys this little bit because I thought it was just so good and he's so right. And this is why Meghan Markle is failing. It just is. This is why. This is 100% why. And so here we go.
Why do all of Meghan Markle's projects keep failing? Didn't she sign a huge deal with Netflix and all of these, but they all keep flopping. The reason they keep flopping is because she doesn't have anything to say.
He's so right. She has nothing to say. She has nothing interesting to tell us. And so what I think is happening is that she constantly promises things. And when you really watch her, there's no there. You're like, but she's just giving me these general banalities. There's nothing deeper to what she's presenting to us. I mean, I even watched briefly, and I think I recorded it, so maybe I'll share it here in a second, This woman, and she obviously was very wealthy in Manhattan, she talked about simply how she took a bouquet of flowers from Trader Joe's and saved hundreds of dollars by making her own bouquets. And she does it so quickly. And I was like, even if she's a very wealthy woman, I connect with her because Meghan talks about making a bouquet, but I didn't learn anything. Like her, at least this woman on Instagram, I learned how to save some money if I can make a bouquet myself by going to Trader Joe's. Meghan Markle makes this ridiculous bouquet of flowers, and you sort of learn nothing because she doesn't have anything to say. People watch my channel and others because they feel like we have something to say. We're saying it in interesting ways, we're bringing out interesting points, different points, and all those sorts of things. But Meghan Markle has nothing to say. And everything is mired in word salad nonsense, and nobody is buying it anymore. The more she talks, the more empty she is. And that is what is truly going on here. So let's keep watching a little bit because a lot of this was pretty good.
Which is fine, I guess. Plenty of people don't have that much to say. But if you want to communicate, if you want to be a public figure who is a thought leader, who you need to have like at least something to say.
He is so right. She wants to be this huge mover and shaker. We see this. She is on and goes to that Time 100 event, even though she wasn't on the list. I'm sure Ted Sandros from Netflix and her own PR team paid for her to be there. But she really had nothing to say. Nothing that what she was saying was actually a thought leader. She wants to be a thought leader. She wants to be this mover and shaker, but she really doesn't have anything to say. And that's why I get so annoyed with people who sometimes follow her. I'm like, you realize she's saying nothing. She's saying something that's been said better 12,000 times before. Her contributions here are minimal at best, like minimal. She has nothing deeper to say. And so when she's trying to be somebody who's like this towering figure, it always falls flat because people sort of are in on the con. People are more and more in on the con. And the more we see her, even my mom was saying recently, the more she sees Meghan, the weirder she seems. And so it's not helping the more we see her because the more we see her, the less tangible she seems because she's talking out of both sides of her mouth. She just talks in soliloquies all the time. She just gives general banalities like the yet conversation hasn't happened yet. You haven't met your soulmate yet, like on the Jamie Kerns show, which was just pointless positivity. You need to sometimes, and I said this before, and I think it's true. Yes, some things might not happen yet, but at the same time, you can't be, well, I'll just get the promotion. It just hasn't happened yet. And then 10 years later, you're still in the same job doing the exact same thing because you didn't do anything to make yourself somebody who is appealing to upper management to promote. Instead, you were just kind of there. And that is Meghan's problem. She's just there. And there's nothing deeper to her.
But this has been Meghan Markle's MO from the beginning. She wants all of the privileges that go along with an identity, but she doesn't want any of the responsibilities. She doesn't want to do any of the work.
Yes. And we've actually seen this throughout her whole time in public life. So this is pre-royalty and then post-royalty. And I guess you could say royalty too. Even as a bit player on Suits, she was going in front of, let's say, a couple of members of the UN and giving this big speech. And it's like, why? Because she paid her PR team up the wazoo to promote her in front of things. But it was empty because she really hadn't done the groundwork to stay there. She just paid to get there. And that has been Meghan Markle's MO the entire time, is to throw money at things to get ahead rather than doing the work. Because Tom Bauer said in his book, Revenge, is that Meghan could have, according to somebody he spoke with at Northwestern, she was given the advice of, hey, go to New York and do off-Broadway plays, get better, and then you can go on to bigger and better things. But Meghan just wanted to shortcut it. So she was a briefcase girl on Deal or No Deal because she didn't have a ton of talent and she didn't want to work on her craft. And so the best she could get was this bit thing. And this has been Meghan Markle's MO from the beginning. This is why she crapped out as a royal, why they're crapping out now, is because she wants to throw money at every single problem. And she never does the work to make things happen. And her product line reflects that. I think it was shoddily done. It was quickly done because she had to change the brand name because she launched the brand name too soon. And then she had to walk that back. Like so many stupid mistakes. And she sort of referenced, oh, I made mistakes. I'm learning. No, 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 no. Honey, you have enough money to avoid this level of stupidity. You have enough money to avoid it. But she's also arrogant, thinks she knows everything, and doesn't like to be told no. And so you have this caustic, terrible dynamic where everything starts off maybe okay and then craters into oblivion. And we are seeing this play out again this year for sure.
She wants the tiara. She doesn't want the public service. So she runs into becoming a princess, but then when she realizes that you actually have to do things when you're a princess, it's not all just Disneyland, people waiting on you hand and foot and adulating you when you actually have to do things. Then she says, I don't want to be a princess anymore.
Exactly. When it wasn't just about, and I think part of the other thing is not just the work issue. I think the work issue is definitely an issue for Harry and Meghan, but also that she couldn't be queen of it. I think she really wanted to be the queen, the top dog in the monarchy. And when she was sort of told, no, that's not how this works, she married the spare. You were sort of spare yourself. Like you're a spare of a spare here. You're not even all that important to the continuity of the monarchy. I think that's when Meghan was mad. It wasn't that she could throw money at the problem, because Meghan just wants to throw money at the problem. Guys, I truly believe that actually most of her money from Suits went to PR. I think most of it was siphoned off so she could send it to PR to promote her up the wazoo, but none of it was really working because, again, she doesn't want to do the actual hard work. She always is looking for the shortcut.
I want to go back and be an actress. Then I can play a princess in a Disney movie or something. And it's not just her. I'm not just beating up on Meghan Markle. So many people, they want all the privileges. They want all of the honors. They want all the plaudits, but they don't want to do anything.
Yes, I see that as an issue generally. And guys, doing this YouTube thing, it's a lot of hard work. And I know some people, I've heard some people before go, well, this is easy. I mean, it might be easy if you have an editor or stuff like that, but it's like, I don't have an editor. I do everything myself. I design my own merchandise, and I have had to travel to get pictures. I tried to get better at using a camera, and I have a high-end DSLR. I don't know how to use it fully, but I have it so I can get good pictures, so I can have my own stock of images I can use in the future, and all these sorts of things, all this hard work I put into everything. And and I know that's the same for so many people. Running a business is not easy, but a lot of people just want the accolades and none of the work. And you have to, I think, slowly build up by doing the hard work. And yeah, it's not always pretty. It's not always fun. And hopefully one day I can have a whole team and we can all be doing stuff and it could be great. But I'm not there yet. But it's one of those things where you're slowly working. But Meghan doesn't want to do any of that. This is why they have constant turnover. They actually hire people who I think want to work hard. And then they are stifled by Harry and Meghan's indecision. And they are stifled by bad decisions. And so this is why people leave. This is what we got in the Hollywood Reporter piece, which was actually very small, but basically said they're lazy, they don't take advice. And when they don't take advice and things fail, they blame other people rather than blaming themselves. And she can't take direction. And we see this play out over and over and over again. And money is not the fix to every problem, I'm sorry to say.
And actually her advice ties in perfectly with this mistaken way of thinking. She says, things aren't really working out for me yet. I'm sure they will tomorrow. I don't have to.
So I think this is very true. I don't like the conversation of yet. I actually mentioned this in my review of her interview with Jamie Kern-Lima. It's like, I don't like that because and he goes into this here, it doesn't require you to change things, because sometimes you can just say, well, something will happen. It just hasn't happened yet and yet and yet. But what if you needed to change things? What if the toxic positivity of doing a YouTube channel for 20 years and not having it ever move by any metric, you wasted a crap ton of time and money to do something that failed? And that's not a good strategy in life, I think sometimes, because sometimes the best thing you can do is pivot, not just say, well, it hasn't happened yet. Well, maybe it hasn't happened yet because you haven't done X, Y, and Z to make the yet happen. Or maybe the yet is never going to happen because you don't have either the skills or the personality or maybe the education or what have you to do X, Y, and Z things. Like there's so many things we can do. But sometimes it's just like, I'm too tall to be a gymnast. I'm not. That's not the case. But like if you're a kid and you want to be a professional gymnast and you're 6'1", you grow up to be 6'1", you're not going to be a good gymnast because it requires somebody who's a bit smaller. Not that you can't have certain skills, but there are certain realities that we all must deal with. So it's best sometimes to deal with reality rather than just going and living in the fanciful world of yet.
To change anything about myself. I don't need to work. I don't need to be in any way introspective. I'm just going to keep doing all the things that I'm doing that have failed. And I'm not going to take any responsibility. I'm not going to suggest that maybe that might be my fault. And
That's a great point. And it's one thing I pointed out too, is that she doesn't seem to be learning from any of her mistakes because she's making the same ones. I haven't listened to the podcast at all because, like, I don't care, but I listen to Archetypes. And this sounds like sort of another version of Archetypes, the Confessions of a Female Founder. And I see a track record of terrible business decisions. So, why would I listen to a woman talking about business when she's just made a slew of mistakes and just kind of generally goes, I made a couple of mistakes, but not really drilling down into why? Because she kind of just said generally, well, it was too geographically specific. It's like, but it was already geographically specific. Like, I'm sure a trademark attorney told you that in the first place. And that doesn't excuse you from promoting products you couldn't sell. And she's still calling her mainstay of her brand, which is spread, by the way, she still keeps calling it jam. It's like, you don't even know your products. Like, how are we supposed to invest in your products if you don't even know them? And so these series of blunders are totally avoidable for somebody at her level with her level of money. For me, and maybe people starting up, I would be fine with that. Like everybody makes mistakes. I totally get that. But she is at the level where she's making like severely stupid decisions in regards to her business that is laughable to anybody who knows a smidge. Like you could have a whole class around the bad decisions of Meghan Markle when it comes to business. And the biggest mistake, of course, is not working very hard. That's why they got dropped from Spotify. Their output was so dismal. I mean, she only has 8 episodes of Confessions of a Female Founder. Is she surprised at all people aren't tuning in anymore? Because she already told them that this is a one and done, very short thing. That's essentially what she's told people. And it's just like she's always throwing things up against the wall. And I need to do a whole video on this. I realize this is getting really long. But the other thing that really bugs me is that when you think about it, Meghan Markle has had 4 brands that she's launched this year. 4 or 5 brands. It's too many. It's too confusing. None of them they kind of seem to overlap and then don't at the same time. And I was looking at Gwyneth Paltrow and Goop, and it's like Goop podcast, Goop website, Goop wellness. Like it all centralizes around that particular brand. And so things aren't clashing because we have With Love, as ever, Confessions of a Female Founder, and Meghan herself as a brand. And then you have Megan Sussex too that you could put out there. Technically, Megan would be like Instagram. And so you have all these competing brands that kind of overlap and don't, and they don't have a good consistency. If she had launched a single brand, a well thought out strategy of a single brand and built within that rather than having 6, she might be doing better. But again, she doesn't want to learn anything. She just constantly throws these things up against the wall and fails to build on something that's maybe a smaller concept that she can slowly grow because she wants everything at once. None of the hard work to get to point Z. She wants to go from A to Z without going through the rest of the alphabet.
No. It'll just all change tomorrow. What do they say that the definition of insanity is you try the same thing over and over and you expect a different result? That's Meghan Markle. She hasn't learned the chief lesson of her public life.
That is so good. I thought that was really, really good. Definition of sanity is doing the same thing all the time and not expecting a different result. That is 100% Meghan. She's doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again and expecting a different result. And it never, ever happens. And it's so easy to see why. She's failed at every single level, and she could have learned. Like, there's so many things where I was trying to give, like, some decent brand advice, and I'm sure she has people she could pay to get that to her, but they scare them away all the time because I think most of their business associates are terrified of her. She's a dictator in heels, according to the Hollywood Reporter, and I believe that.
which is you have to do things. You can't just be a thing. You have to do things. If you want to be the thing, you have to do things.
I think that's actually really, really astute. You have to do things. You just can't be it. You have to do it. And the thing is, Meghan Markle just wants to be it. She just says the banalities, but the reality on the ground is never reflected in what she says. And the biggest example, of course, is the royal family. There were so many instances in Meghan's Instagram and podcast and TV show and everything where she's talking about how much she wants to love on people and how much she wants to welcome them into her home and all these sorts of things. But we see the reality. You don't allow the people who should be closest to you in. You only want the famous and wealthy people you think can get you further in Hollywood. We know you won't host Catherine and William at your home and their children. We know you won't. And we know you won't host Charles or Camilla. We know you don't bend over backwards to help them. We know that you're purposely blackmailing, basically, this is my opinion, King Charles emotionally by preventing him from seeing his grandchildren, by staying in the States and not making the effort to visit the United Kingdom when you 100% could. You 100% could. You were being needlessly cruel. And I think it's pathetic. I think it's awful, but that's Harry and Meghan. That's Harry and Meghan. And Meghan's unfavorability here should not be a surprise. She has been the architect of her own demise. And I think there should be a space out there for an entire video at some point of the rise and fall of Meghan Markle. And she has been the key factor in all of this. She can't really blame anybody but herself. So, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of this video, and I shall talk to you again very soon. Bye.